So today we are going to be looking at the martial attack, which is a very known gambit in the closed RuyLopez, which starts after the moves e4, e5, knight f3 attacking the e5 pawn, knight c6 defending the e5 pawn, and bishop to b5 is the RuyLopez or the Spanish opening. Here black plays the move a6, kicking away our bishop. We retreat it to a4, and knight to f6 is black's move. We castle, bishop e7, rook e1, defending the e4 pawn, b5, bishop to b3, and now black doesn't follow the main line with d6, but he castles. We still play c3, trying to put our central pawn on d4, and here black can play the move d6, retransposing into the main lines of the closed RuyLopez, but black chooses to sacrifice the d5 pawn with the move pawn to d5. We of course take the pawn, and after black recaptures, as you can see, this pawn is completely free. And after we take this pawn, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and rook takes e5, we have a position with a pawn more. So here black needs to defend this knight because it's attacked by the rook on e5 and by the bishop on b3. So black plays the move c6. And here white already has two main moves, one of which being the move d4, which is a main line in fact, and one of which being the move d3. So d3 is my preferred way of playing, and today I'm gonna show you the move d3, but we'll go through the move d4 first for the players with the black pieces to know how to react after this move d4. This move d4 doesn't have a lot of theory because it's the main line and everyone plays it, and black will be really well prepared and white will have no advantage. So after the move d4, bishop to d6 will be played. We retreat our rook back to e1, and after queen to h4 you can see black has a lot of counterplay with his pieces looking towards our king. So here, of course, the threat is to take this pawn on h2, and we need to match this threat via the move g3. So many of you might ask, why not the move h3? But h3 simply runs into bishop takes h3, a beautiful bishop sacrifice. After we take the bishop on h3, black clearly has a lot of advantage, threatening all those sorts of checkmate patterns with queen to h2, maybe trying to rook lift his rook to g6 and mate our lonely king. And the position is very bad for white. White here has only one move to survive the attack, which is the move rook to e5, just sacrificing the rook, but white still has this really bad king on g1. So the move is g3 of course, and after queen to h3, which is the only move for black, we develop our bishop to e3, and after bishop g4 attacking our queen, we move queen to the square d3, and the theory continues. Rook e8, knight d2, rook e6, trying to rook lift this a rook to maybe to g6 or maybe to h6 after the move knight takes e3, and the theory continues. a4, queen h5 being the main line, we take this pawn on b5, black recaptures with the f1, and knight to f1 is kinda end of this theory. So you can see that black still has a lot of piece activity on these two diagonals. Black will have an open E file after remove like rook f to e8 and will pressure black throughout the middle game. So white doesn't have really that much. Of course, he has a pawn more, but black has a lot of piece activity and a lot of space on the king's side. So after move c6 defending the pawn, I prefer to play here the move pawn to d3. And pawn to d3 is not as attacking or as logical to many of you, because of course the opening principle is to put your pawn into the center, but pawn d3 just open diagonal for the bishop, and after rook will move back, this pawn will be stable here. So this is a sideline, and many people with black pieces doesn't know how to react, but the plan is of course the same. Black plays bishop to d6, we retreat our rook back to e1, and here black has a few options. And these few options are, of course, the move queen to h4, which is the main line, and the move bishop to f5, which we are gonna be looking right now. So after bishop f5, there is a little bit of pressure on this d3 pawn, and we play here queen to f3. And black still plays queen h4, we still play g3, and now black has a few options. First is of course queen to h3, and I'm sorry, this is the only option black has, I'm sorry. And after queen to h3, we just take the knight, and we take this pawn as well. And after rook a to d8, threatening some discoveries along this semi-open d file, so we retreat this queen back to g2, and after queen to h5, which is the main line, white continues with the move bishop e3 and has a very solid position. So here black has two options. He can either take this pawn or play bishop to h3. And we will look at bishop takes d3 first. After bishop takes d3, we simply develop our knight to d2 and we have a solid position. Here is where the theory ends actually. And the other option is bishop to h3. And after bishop to h3, we retreat our queen back to h1. And this line is very, very interesting. Not many players with the black pieces know this line. And after f5, you can start to see what is the plan for black. We'll play bishop to b6, attacking the rook. And now black really has only one attempt to solidify his play. This is the move f4, threatening to play f3, bishop g2, and trap our queen on h1. But we play bishop takes the d8 rook, allowing pawn f3. We play bishop to b6, saving this bishop. And after bishop to g2, we of course take this bishop and simply develop the knight. As you can see in this position, white has two extra pawns, but has a rook and a bishop for a queen. So, and this pawn will be picked up very soon. So this position is very good for white, and of course the position is very equal. But if anyone can win this, is probably player with the white pieces. So in the position we were just looking, after bishop f5, we play the move queen to f3, queen h4 is played, we play g3, And here we just looked at the move queen h3, queen h3 followed by bishop takes pawn and queen takes d5, and after rook a to d8 we played queen to g2. And now we looked 2 lines after the move queen to h5. But black can trade queens on g2, and after king takes g2, black can take this pawn, and white still is up a pawn, but after bishop e3, bishop e4 check, f3, bishop c6, and knight to d2, the position is pretty stable for black, although he is down a pawn, but he has these two bishops, looking at the king side. So the position is normally very drawish, but of course, if anyone can win, this probably is again player with the white pieces. So these were 3 lines after the move bishop to f5 in this position, but the main line after rook to e1 continues with queen to h4, threatening to win a pawn on h2. So as I said, in the lines with d4 and queen to h4, this is the position, but the pawn is on d4 instead of d3. In this position, the pawn is on d3, which is our variation, and here we play g3 as well. And after queen to h3, we play rook to e4. This is a very interesting idea in these positions. That's why we put the pawn on d3 in the first time, to support our rook on e4. What's the idea? The idea is, of course, to play rook to h4 and have our own ideas on the king's side with these two bishops as well. So after a rook to e4, black has few options. The main line is to retreat the queen to d7, not allowing any tricks with rook to h4. But the two moves, the two sidelines we're gonna be looking are knight to f6 and queen to f5 in this position. So after knight to f6 here, we of course play rook to h4, attacking the queen. Queen has to move back to f4, and we play knight to d2. And here black has a way to win an exchange. You can try to find how black can do it, but white is still very fine in these positions. And of course the move is pawn to g5, which looks very interesting and risky as well. So we of course play the move rook to h6, defending our rook, and after knight to g4, we play the move knight to e4, attacking this pawn and attacking this bishop. And here, of course, black will capture our rook on h6 and will capture the bishop on d6. And after queen g6, we attacking our knight, we retreat back to e4, and this is the end of theory. But as you can see, we have this bishop for black's rook, but we as well have a pawn more, and this pawn is attacked by the knight and the bishop on c1, and we have very good position because black cannot play the move f6 due to this pin on this diagonal. So we will win this pawn as well. So after the move knight to e4, black can try one more thing, which is bishop to e7, not taking our rook, but after bishop to e7, we can simply play rook to h5, attacking this pawn, and after queen to g6, we can sacrifice an exchange and win this pawn, and the position is better in this variation than it was after the move knight to e4, and of course we would want this pawn, but when we sacrifice the exchange in this particular variation, we stand a little bit better. The evaluation of the position is plus 0.5, which means that white has an advantage. So after remove rook to e4, we just looked at knight to f6, and another sideline which we are gonna be looking right now is queen to f5, as I mentioned earlier. And after queen to f5, we just develop our knight to d2, trying to get to f3 or to maybe f1 and then to e3 in some positions. And after knight to d2, the theory goes queen to g6. And after queen g6, we just retreat our rook back to e1, cause black was threatening in this position bishop to f5, winning this pawn. So after rook to e1, you can see that this pawn is hanging, but if black were to capture this pawn, we would have bishop c2 winning and trapping this queen, and of course black has knight takes c3 attacking our queen, and we just take this free piece and we have a piece, a minor piece more, and we have a winning position. So after remove rook e1, black cannot capture this pawn on d3. You must remember this trick with bishop to c2. So after rook to e1, f5 will be played, threatening some f4 tricks, and we just play in this position, we just play f4, and you can see that that's a pawn sacrifice due to this pin on the g file, and black will capture our pawn on f4, and that's of course what we wanted, because we have this move queen to f3 with tempo, and after bishop to b8, saving the bishop, we just take this pawn on d5, and rather than capturing this pawn, we can play the move knight to b3, and this pawn is of course not going anywhere, and we'll capture it on the next move. So that's the end of the theory in this particular sideline. After the move rook to e4, the move queen to f5 is what we were just looking at, and after rook to e4, the main line goes queen to d7, as I mentioned, not allowing any rook to h4 tempo moves. So after queen to d7, we just develop our knight to d2, bishop to b7 will be played, putting this bishop on this very long diagonal, looking towards our king on g1, and of course black is threatening to play c5 and maybe sacrifice the knight to win this rook on e4, so we just play rook to e1, saving our rook, and after c5 activating this light square bishop on this awesome diagonal, we play knight to e4, putting pressure on the bishop, and after bishop e7, this is the theory, we just play bishop to g5, trying to trade these two bishops, and this is the end of the theory in this particular line. This was the main line of the martial attack, and if you want to play the martial attack with the white pieces, I recommend you to play the move d3 in this position, after the move c6 to play d3, and if you are going to be playing the martial attack with the black pieces, be ready for some exciting chess, for some attacking chess, and don't be afraid to sacrifice this pawn in the early opening phase, because you will have enough counterplay to face this extra material which white is going to have inevitably of what you are going to do. So that was the theory in the martial attack in the RuyLopez. After the closed RuyLopez, black sacrifices this pawn, and if white knows the theory, white will be fine, but as I said, if white don't know what he is doing, he will have a lot of problems in the middle game, and black will win the game. Just one thing before the end, the most games in the top level of chess, of grandmaster level play in the martial attack ends in a draw, because if the two players playing this opening know what they are doing, the most likely result is in fact draw. But don't let this stop you. Play the martial attack. If you're white, play the RuyLopez. Try to fight the martial attack properly and try to make use of this extra pawn. See you guys in another video.